The largest crowd in football history fell completely silent in a single moment. Nearly 200,000 people had packed into a stadium expecting a celebration, a coronation, the greatest day their country had ever known. And then, with one kick of a ball, all of them went quiet at once. It was so sudden that people who were there described it as the silence of a graveyard. They never forgot it. Neither did the nation. But the real story is stranger than a lost final. The year was 1950, and Brazil was hosting the World Cup. To mark the occasion, they had built the largest stadium in the world, the Maracanã, in Rio de Janeiro. It was a monument to a nation that believed, with total certainty, that it was about to be crowned champion of the world. And they had every reason to believe it. Their team was extraordinary, playing football so beautiful and so ruthless that they had crushed everyone in their path. By the final match, Brazil looked unstoppable. The tournament that year did not end with a single final in the way you might expect. It ended with a final group, and it came down to one decisive game: Brazil against Uruguay. And the situation could not have been more in Brazil's favor. Because of how the points had fallen, Brazil only needed a draw. Just a draw in their own stadium, in front of their own people, to be champions of the world. Uruguay had to win outright, and almost nobody believed they could. The country was already celebrating. Newspapers printed that morning declared Brazil the champions before a ball had even been kicked. A song had been written for the victory. 22 gold medals were prepared, engraved with the names of the Brazilian players. The mayor of Rio reportedly gave a speech to the team calling them champions in advance. Everything was ready for a party. All that remained was to play the game, and for a while, it went exactly to plan. Early in the second half, Brazil scored. The Maracanã erupted. Now Uruguay needed 2 goals against the greatest team on the planet, in the most hostile stadium imaginable, with the clock running down. It was, by any reasonable measure, over. The celebration could begin. But there was one man on the Uruguayan side who refused to accept it. Their captain, a defender named Obdulio Varela, gathered his shaken teammates and told them, in effect, that the game was not lost, that they could still win. And slowly, impossibly, Uruguay came back. They equalized. The stadium grew tense, uneasy, but still confident. A draw was still enough. Brazil were still champions. And then, with around 11 minutes left to play, it happened. A Uruguayan forward named Alcides Gigia surged down the right and struck the ball toward goal. It slipped past the goalkeeper and into the net. Uruguay had taken the lead. And in that instant, the largest crowd in the history of football simply stopped making sound. The silence was the thing people never forgot. Gigia himself later said something haunting. He said that only 3 people had ever silenced the Maracana, and he was one of them. 200,000 voices, cut off at once, replaced by nothing but the shuffling of feet and quiet weeping. Brazil threw everything forward in the final minutes, but the goal would not come. The whistle blew. Uruguay, against all logic and all expectation, were champions of the world, and Brazil, in their own cathedral, had lost. What followed was not just disappointment, it was a national wound. The defeat became known as the Maracanazo, the Maracanan blow. It was treated not as a football result, but as a tragedy, almost a shame that had fallen on the entire country. Some of the Brazilian players never truly recovered from it. The goalkeeper that day, a man named Barbosa, was blamed for the loss and haunted by it for the rest of his life, decades later still saying he was being punished for a crime he did not commit. A whole nation had poured its identity into a single afternoon, and the afternoon had broken its heart. So look again at that silent stadium. It is one of the most powerful reminders in all of sport that nothing is ever certain until it is finished. The medals were engraved. The songs were written. The victory was, in every mind in that country, already real. And it was all undone in 11 minutes by a team that simply refused to believe the game was over. The greatest favorites in football history were beaten because they, and everyone around them, had already stopped competing in their hearts. The largest crowd in football history fell completely silent in a single moment. And now you know why, more than 70 years later, that silence still echoes. Because it was the sound of a certainty collapsing, of a party that never happened, and of a lesson that football teaches again and again, that the game is never won until the final whistle blows. If this gripped you, subscribe and never assume a game is over before it ends.